to understand micro frontend, you need to understand a bit of microservices as well, because that's where the idea came from. I think it might be about a decade, maybe 8 years ago, when the approach of micro frontends comes from the idea of the single responsibility principle applied to both the front ends and the workflow of teams. And it, again, comes from the same as microservices, where every single service is responsible for a single thing only.
Welcome to the Ecommerce Toolbox Expert Perspectives, a podcast by Noibu, where we explore the elite strategies and cutting-edge insights with our expert guests. Get ready to propel your e-commerce business to the next level.
Welcome to another episode of the Ecommerce Toolbox Experts Perspective. Joining us today, we have a micro front end, a headless, everything composable specialist, Alex Canessa, joining us all the way from beautiful Italy. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Alex, I always like to start off by learning a bit more about your background. So maybe start a bit about how your background and how you ended up in the role that you're in today.
Sure. So Commerce Layer is really my first role in the platform role, and the first role as a head of developer relations, because before that I was born as a developer. And I was working as a software engineer in Italy, 2008, and then moved to London, 2014, and then starting in an agency environment, and then all the way up to head of engineering. So my role was really about mentorship, career for the engineers, as well as the architecting enterprise projects. Then what happened is, while I was Ernest & Young in the UK, I was looking after the composable trend, and then I met with the guys at Commerce Layer, and it was love at first sight with the platform. And then after a bit, I joined the company.
Love it. So you mentioned your roles at Commerce Layer. Maybe talk to us a bit about what does that role actually entail?
It's a good question. I remember the time I joined, that was September last year. I immediately got in touch with Team Benix and asked him, because he's popular developer relations. And he did say it was up to me to craft the developer relations role that I wanted to be as well. So it's basically said it's a tailored role that I needed to define. And it's funny how June was full of conferences that kind of made me think about the role I'm having, because I went to Shop Talk, then Lead Dev, and then Mach 3. And the Shop Talk, it was very talking to merchants about the tech implementations of Commerce Layer. Lead Dev, I was actually speaking, and Lead Dev is with CTOs and experts and coders. And Mach 3 was all about partnerships, tech partnerships and solution partnerships, and how we can all work together as an industry. And I think this kind of encapsulate what I think developer relations is for me. So it's kind of acting as a bridge between Commerce Layer and the rest of the industry, and meeting people and talking about connections, as well as coding and lots of conversations.
Love it. You also mentioned Mach 3, and I believe that you also have a role with the Mach Alliance. Do you want to maybe just talk about, from a high level, what is the Mach Alliance and a bit about what your role is there today?
So the Mach Alliance was originally thought as an acronym. I think they're slowly getting rid of the acronym. That was for microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless. The idea of the Mach Alliance is to get rid of not great architectures that are around and trying to put something like an entity that can help the customers mainly to find the good products and the good system integrators out there. Sometimes it's seen as a composable architecture. So composable and Mach go very close together often. But I think if you think of composable architecture being the way the industry is seeing at the moment, at least how things should be done, you can see Mach to be the team that is ensuring that people are doing it right. And then the customers, the final clients, can actually get the right tools to get towards that composable journey. The role I'm now undertaking at the Mach Alliance is part of the admission panel. So I'm part of the people that can do the tech checks around the new people that want to join and new teams that want to join the Mach Alliance. So we, again, trying to make sure that it's all adhering to our idea of industry standards, basically.
That's awesome. And when you start kind of reading some of the Mach content as well, and there's a lot of different terms like micro front end, headless, a lot of these things are new to a lot of folks. So maybe talk to us a bit about what is a micro front end. I know that's something that Commerce Layer is obviously very kind of innovative and supportive of. So maybe talk to us a bit about like what is a micro front end and how is that different from like headless and all the different architectures that we're seeing in the market?
Sure. So I think to understand micro front end, you need to understand about microservices as well, because that's where the idea came from. I think might be about a decade, maybe 8 years ago, when the approach of micro front ends comes from the idea of the single responsibility principle applied to both the front ends and the workflow of teams. And it, again, comes from the same as microservices, where every single service is responsible for a single thing only. And that can help also the development and the release of these services. So instead of, there is such a thing as a monolith front end, and that's what the micro front ends are trying to eliminate. It's not really about the size. So the micro doesn't mean it's like a small front end. It just means it's an independent piece of releasable function. It could be a user journey as well as just a part of it, but can be released independently. So in terms of Commerce Layer, we developed using web components, React components, and hosted applications, abstractions of our APIs for reducing the time to market when you're implementing a commerce website using Commerce Layer. For example, a micro front end could be just get the price of a SKU or add an SKU to your basket or buy something. We built on top of that independently again. So everything is releasable and independent. And then we even built hosted applications like the checkout, the cart, my account, and microstores. So you can have these independent piece of application that in this case could be the checkout that your team can implement, fork, or rebuild, but then deploy. Now, if you consider these little micro front ends all independent, it wouldn't really be possible without a headless structure. Headless meaning an API-led front end. So if you consider that every single front end has the ability to get the data or the actions through an API, that's only possible because of this new idea of headless. Not too new, but relative to the rest of the technologies.
So maybe talk to us a bit about how is that distinctly different, those two different things?
So the headless concept usually is attached to the API source. So it's a headless CMS. Even though the word headless, it's a bit misleading sometimes, you need to think of a head as in the front of something, as in like the head of cycling, people cycling. So that's the head of it. You need to think about it as a brain. So the headless CMS is the brain of your APIs, right? So it provides all the backend, and then the front end will be separate. So the headless structure is really an objective of the platform that supports that kind of architecture. Whereas the micro front ends are pieces of client side or customer facing elements that subscribe and consume the headless API.
That's cool. Now, translating this to business terms, why would someone implement either of those or one or the other rather? Like, why would you pick headless or micro front end and vice versa? Like, what are some of the kind of more business focused reasons why you would do something like that out of curiosity?
It is funny because, again, coming from a different life where I was actually building websites and applications for clients, I did see many times just people wanted to have a headless architecture just because it was a buzzing word. So like, oh, we just want to go headless. But then we were asking like, why do you want to go headless? What's the reason? Is it actually the architecture for you? Now, given the microservices, micro front ends, headless architecture is really focusing on a good programming and architecting pattern, which is that one of them, at least a single responsibility principle. So everything is responsible for a single thing. It always been a programming pattern. But now, after the problems that more monolithic experiences have caused to the businesses in terms of difficulty of updating, getting the team stuck, having dependencies on the development team, all of those business problems were actually solved by a programming pattern, which is that keeping different verticals. Now, there is a misconception that if you go headless, all your problems go away. You still need to architect things in the right way. you can have a solid architecture done in a monolith way, but it will still hit a wall when you're trying to hit different verticals and a way of running the business. Now, why would a business go headless? Because you can actually end with the micro front ends. You can work on those verticals and release those verticals while you keep working on the rest of the product and independently. So you can release independent parts of your application without having a massive dependencies across the different teams. So you can go MVP on MVP on MVP on MVP and release this function, release this journey. And it is an easier or cleaner way for enterprise, especially companies, to go live.
I love it a lot. I think that's something that you called out that obviously the Mock Alliance will help with that as well, is like understanding when is the right time and what is the right infrastructure given the business requirements. Pivoting to a bit more curious, obviously you're in a unique position at Commerce Layer. Could you give us any kind of a secret or public info about what the roadmap, like what are you guys really putting your focus on as you guys are expanding into the market?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can say all of this because I've been seeing it around anyway. So to understand these things that really excites me about the roadmap, I just need to talk a little bit about what's the focus of the business in general, because Commerce Layer doesn't believe that the product catalog lives within the commerce engine. So to us, the base product name, the description, the images, even the attributes are not relevant for the commerce engine to perform the transaction. What we need about that product is just the SKU, its availability in the market, and what price do we sell it against, and then promotions and all of that. So the focus of the business is the same of the focus of the platform, which makes it performant in that kind of thing. So that's the direction we took. So we shifted the focus from the experience layer towards the commerce layer. Now, what that means is that we're now looking towards a unified commerce experience. So we're looking to have a POS and in-store capabilities attaching to other existing POSs that will go through the same fulfillment of the order. And at that point, all the OMS capabilities that we have will be coming from both the in-store and online experience. And same for all the stocking, all of the availabilities and pricing systems and customer VIP loyalty programs. All of that could be unified in a single platform engine. So that POS capabilities that is coming now soon, we're working on now, it's really exciting me because it opens up a lot of conversations about, we've been asking people like, what is really commerce? Is it really the product, or is it the engine, the transactional engine that allows you to sell on any platform and in store? So yeah, that for sure.
That's cool. So that's a pretty big push into omnichannel then.
Yes, that's a real omnichannel at that point.
Cool. I love that. As we're looking towards starting to wrap this up, another quick question that I'm curious for you is, why do you think the role that you're in now, why do you think it's kind of something that's a bit more relatively new at the platform level? Do you see it kind of getting bigger and other platforms maybe adopting a similar role? Prior to meeting with you, I hadn't really met anyone in the exact same distinct role. Obviously, there's a lot of technical advisors, things like that. So I'm curious, like when you look at it as a whole, like, do you think it's something that's going to be kind of growing across the years moving forward?
Interesting question. I think there is definitely the aspect that this role is very versatile depending on the platform, because every company has their own way of doing developer advocate strategies. And I've been seeing this role be more and more dominant on the market. And I think the reason is that developers, that built by developers for developers, it means things are done with documentation and API, and there is somebody that is there to promote that developer culture. It is public relations for developers, but then it's agency developers, right? It's professional developers. And you've seen the rising of different accelerators that companies are doing. Now, that's not the only thing that's happening. It's also people like me and the developer relations team that build those mini accelerators between the different tech solutions. So I think that's why creating that ecosystem in a rising composable architecture world, it's fundamental, because then it's me talking to people, to other tech partners, like the different CMSs or the different search engines, and working together so that the implementation of a composable architecture is easier for the final system integrator or client. If we are connecting all the platforms together. And this never really existed in a monolith world, because then you only had the single pillar and all the developers there. Whereas now you want the full package coming from the best of need, as we say, not the best of breed, but the best of need.
I love it. And Alex, we're looking to wrap up. Any parting words for anyone listening? Obviously, I'm sure you share thoughts consistently. How could they find you? LinkedIn? Do you have a blog? Just as we look to kind of sign off.
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn as Alex Canessa, and on the Commerce Layer website, there was a blog section, which we use to spread our thought leadership. And also I'm probably at most of the conferences, like industry conferences, and always happy to chat about code and drinks afterwards as well.
Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks for your time today, Alex. It was a pleasure getting your thoughts and really appreciate it.
Thank you.
The E-commerce Toolbox Expert Perspectives is brought to you by Noibu. To find out more about Noibu and how we can help you debug your e-commerce site and rocket your revenue, visit www.noibu.com. That's Noibu.com. And then make sure to search for the E-commerce Toolbox Expert Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found, and click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Noibu, thanks for listening.